Good afternoon. I am Counselor Dee Knutson, and I would like to call our weekly informational meeting together for March 31st, 2008, and what a beautiful spring day. We will start with our City Council update. First of all, Deborah Owen.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. It is a wonderful spring day out there. First, just to remind, if I could take a moment to remind people who are listening that absentee voting has begun at the county courthouse. If you would like to cast your vote before Election Day, which is Tuesday, April 8th, you can vote between 8 and 5 p.m. But also on Saturday, between 8 and noon, this Saturday, you can also vote at the county courthouse. If those wanted to have information about there's a sample ballot online, at siouxfalls.org, along with election information concerning all of the candidates and the charter revision language, as well as the basic language of the underscored and overstruck. And then also, we had a little walking challenge over the period of, March till April. And just wanted to report we kind of wrapped it up with about 688 miles for all 11 of us.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And I would just like to publicly thank our incredibly hardworking City Council, City Clerk's Office, for Deborah, Jamie, Tamara, Denise, and Barb. They have been working around the clock almost, getting ready for the city election on April 8th. And sometimes it's easy for even me to remember that they are doing double and triple duty right now. And so again, on behalf of all of the City Council and our community, we would like to thank all of you for your hard work, and we wish you the best. And again, only 8 more days. So anyway, and let's see, with that, I would like to move to our next item, and I don't see the mayor, and or haven't heard of any particular staff reports that are going to be given today and till later. And so I'm going to go ahead with our committee reports, which is a regular routine for us. And I'll start with the Audit Committee. And Councilor Costello, could you help me on that one, since the chairperson is not here right now?
Yep, the Audit Committee met last week, and we went over a couple audit reports, which will be presented by Rich next informational at the next informational. And also we had a presentation on the 2007 annual audit, which I think we're going to get today from Hyde Helmke.
Okay, and thank you.
And no report on the Fiscal Committee.
Okay, and no report there. All right. And Land Use Committee, as Councilor Jameson, please.
We'll have no report other than there will be a committee meeting following this meeting that will entail some discussion on the full-service restaurant definitions and liquor license.
Thank you, Councilor Jameson. Public Services Committee, Councilor Vernon Brown.
We continue to work on daycare issues, and I don't mean to put her on the spot, but I see Carol Muller here, and if she could just take 2 minutes to brief the council on what she's working on for us in regards to public services and daycares. If you could come up here.
Thank you. I wasn't quite prepared to answer that question. But yes, one of the things that I offered to do at the Helpline Center, because we talk to 2,500 parents a year regarding finding daycare and identifying it and choosing it in the Sioux Falls area, that I offered for the Public Services Committee to put together a committee, kind of a task focus group of parents who have contacted us in the last 3 months, said they're looking for child care, and having them speak to the Health Department and to the Public Service Committee and let them hear about their experiences about selecting and using child care. So that will be happening on Thursday.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol, also for that report. And I know that I will be with you Thursday evening for that focus group. So, and maybe other counselors too. Is it, okay, at that point we'll got open discussion. Councilor Litz.
I have a situation. You know, I've been working closely with the Neighborhood Revitalization District that's west of downtown here a little bit. And, there's also the Lake Street closing that is seemingly dragged on forever. Those two things kind of come together in my mind because the neighborhood probably should have been included in the revitalization district, but I know we have to draw the line somewhere. But in my investigation of the Lake Street area where we wanted to close that street, I'm trying to look at the impacts on the neighborhood. And I've become aware that there's a 3-block stretch on Colville or Euclid Avenue that is absolutely been demolished over the years. There's no curb and gutter, the street's bad, and I'm aware now that Public Works, since we did appropriate some extra money for overlays, is going to go in there this year and fix that. That's good for that neighborhood. But there's another situation that I've been investigating for about a month now, and it has to do with some houses that have a certain landlord passed away here a couple of years ago. Somebody else bought some properties, financed them, went into bankruptcy. The bank got the properties back and looked at the properties. They were neglected and need tore down. And as a result of these properties that have been condemned and need tore down, they're nobody's properties right now. The city wants to tear them down, but we're somehow in limbo with these. And I don't know what the legal status is on them, but they've been there long enough. And I would really like to know why we haven't moved forward with tearing these houses down and getting them out of the neighborhood. I've looked in them. There's dead animals laying around there. There's furniture inside them. There's broken windows and glass. And it is literal hell on these neighbors that have to live in that neighborhood with those houses being there. It's an older, dilapidated neighborhood. And, I'm going to be working a little bit more on this to find out what's going on. But, if we're going to clean this city up, if we're going to do what we say in that revitalization district, we have to move ahead. And it's been 2 years that these houses have been condemned, and I don't know why they're still standing there. But I'm going to investigate a little bit more, but I just wanted my fellow councilors to know what's going on over there, and I'm going to bring some more information back to you as I get it, and I would hope that I could spur somebody into action with your help on this matter in the near future.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Litz. And Councilor Stagers, excuse me.
Yeah, Bob, I was just wondering, you said the banks own those buildings right now?
The banks did, but they abandoned them. They don't want them. They don't have them into. They're not doing anything with them. They have given up on them because it is not worth their while to take these properties and try to sell them again. They're in too bad a shape.
So I guess ultimately the responsibility really belongs to those banks.
I'm not certain about that.
Because,
think
if that's their
limbo.
property, now, I don't know, I'm just suggesting maybe
Well,
that's one place you can take a look.
That may be what it is, Dr. Staggers. I guess I don't know, and that was one of the things I'm going to have to investigate. I need some legal advice on where this situation's sitting at, but I can't imagine that we're not moving forward. Just because it's a bank that owns it as opposed to an individual, why would we not require the same things of an institution that we do an individual who owns some dilapidated property that's condemned?
Sometimes we make a few distinctions there. Maybe that's what's going on.
I'm not. The people in that neighborhood are paying the price, Dr. Staggers, and I hope you'll be sympathetic when I bring back some more information to you.
Well, the main thing is we got to find out who's responsible, and if the banks are responsible, then that's who we should be contacting.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Staggers.
And also, Councilor Litz, I would just add, in, if you haven't spoken with anyone at the City Attorney's Office on these particular locations, you may want to do that, and you maybe have already taken care of that, but that might be helpful also. And would there be any other open discussion items? Councilor Brown.
Just to follow up to that, too, because it's just the same landlord who has gone bankrupt, and I've been dealing with properties at 7th and Spring as well, and there's a number of them there that have been condemned and posted that they're to be demolished, and I agree with Councilor Litz. It's taking far too long for that to happen.
Well, and I agree with both of you, and unfortunately, I wish sometimes the legal process worked way faster than it does, because I agree with both of you on that also. Councilor Costello.
I'm curious, does anybody know anything about the staffing report that is being due? Wasn't there a couple of counselors that were working with the administration on police and fire and everything else? It seems like it's been a long time. Does anybody know anything about that?
Councilor Brown.
Councilor Jamison and I met once with the administration on that, and I don't remember what the follow-up was supposed to be. Do you, Bob?
I don't think they've really finalized anything. I think it's still in the study stage, but I think they'll be getting back to us with they had a proposal that they were looking at that it'd be a 5-year plan, but they haven't finalized it, I don't believe.
Was there a particular director that was heading that charge, or Jennifer, or who?
Jennifer was leading the discussion that day, yeah. Jennifer Holson, the HR director.
Councilor Kavanaugh.
Well, I too was assigned to that committee. Unfortunately, I was not able to make that meeting. It was in January, late January. I'm afraid what's happening is that it's fallen into the same wasteland, if you will, as the space needs study. That was done, and there's a draft that's been sitting out there for I believe 5 to 6 months. And I found it somewhat irritating this morning to read the paper to find out that at least 2 of those people on that committee said, well, it's going to be up to the council to decide everything. Well, how can we decide everything if we don't even see the report? I know there's been a draft out there for, as I said before, 5 to 6 months. And I think it's time we started seeing these things. If they want our input, if they want our decision, they're going to need to provide us with the information.
And the only thing I can add on that topic, just from leadership meetings and so forth, would be that I know that the administration plans the end of April, early May to bring that report forward, and typically drafts are not, released to us before that, and I do not believe the mayor has seen that report. So anyway, I do believe in the next month that we will see that or have a presentation on that study. That's the only helpful thing I can add to that discussion. Would there be any other items for open discussion before we go back to our guests on the agenda?
Could we follow up on that staff study? I think that would be worthwhile to have that before the council before budgets start.
Sure. Would one of you who is serving on that like to follow up on that, or would you like me to, or how would you like that to be done? Councilor Brown?
Actually, I'm sorry, I had a different question if you want to finish that.
Okay. Would one of you who's on that committee want to check into the status of that, since you're working on it and I'm not?
I'll follow up this one.
All right. And would you give us a report next week, please, at our informational? Okay. And Councilor Brown?
And I was just curious as well on the timing of the budget. I see that the deadlines have been moved up. Council wasn't really notified of that. I'm curious why the deadlines were moved up for directors.
I can't answer that. Is Director Rowenhorst, would you be able to help us on that, answer that question for us, please?
Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance. We have moved them up primarily because we've changed the process and how we're going about starting the budget plan, and we're focusing a lot more than we have been in the past on the 5-year process. The staffing report that you're talking about, that is not complete as yet, but that is a key piece to our plan, is that 5-year staffing plan. The reason we're putting so much focus on the 5 years is we've got some bumps in the out years, in years 2 through 5, that we have to be planning on how we're going to staff that, and we don't want to get ourselves in a point where we don't have the money. Primarily for like when the fire station comes on, we're going to have to put on 15 additional firemen. That's a pretty big bump. We don't want to have our budget with the 25% rule and a balanced budget. If we spend that money and then you come up to the year when the firemen have to come online, you're going to have to run a deficit, or you'd have to get rid of some of the expenses that you've incurred over the last 2 or 3 years. You'd have to eliminate those. So we've moved up the dates to try and get out ahead of this thing a little bit better, have a little more time to study it. The 5-year plan for staffing is like I say, going to be the real linchpin to the whole thing as far as how we're going to do that, because that's 65% of our budget for the operating fund.
Would you have any other questions for Gene on either of those topics at this time? Anything else that he could help you with? Councilor Kavanaugh?
So are you saying that the first opportunity council will have to look at this staffing study will be at the time the budget is presented to us in July?
The budget? No, I didn't say that. I'm not sure exactly. We've got, there are supposed to be counselors involved in that 5-year plan. I don't know exactly what Jennifer's time window is on that, but you'll be involved before we get to the, before we actually get to July 31st.
Thank you very much. And Councilor Jameson, we look forward to a report from you and your, the councilors on that staffing committee next week. Okay. Then any other public open discussion items, before we go on? All right. Moving forward, the first item on our agenda today is a presentation by Carol Muller and I think Laura Ellsworth from the Helpline Center regarding the community trends of 2007. This is an annual study and annual report that is presented to us for planning purposes. So welcome, Carol.
Good afternoon. Carol Muller from the Helpline Center. Thank you very much for having Laura and I join you for just a few minutes today to talk about the community trends. You know, at the Helpline Center, we answer over 40,000 calls a year, and we collect congregate data that comes in on that and have a responsibility to bring that back to the community because it gives a different picture of what we may sometimes see out there otherwise. We were the first place west of the Mississippi River to start 211 in the year 2001, and since then our call volume has doubled. And nationally, I will tell you that 75% of the country has access to 211, and which is an initiative of United Way of America. Here in South Dakota, we are pleased that 36% of that population has access here in the Sioux Falls area, and for the last 18 months or so out in the Rapid City and Northern Hills. But if you'll glance at the publication that I've just passed out on there, I want to point out just a few things as we look at things. On page 3, you will note that we have our type of calls that we define. A large number of calls that come to us are information and referral calls. There are people who are calling us up and maybe know that they need to get involved in some anger management classes and want to know about resources that are going to be out there. I pulled some of the city numbers this morning because I thought you might be interested in a few of those. For instance, we had 501 people last year who called looking for Falls Community Health. We had 332 people who called us looking for the police department or some information. We also get calls for leaf drop-off, 87 calls, and all the way down to 3 people who called us for the pothole hotline. So the calls are very diverse that happen to come in into calls specifically for the City of Sioux Falls. But there was a total of 5,238 calls related to the City of Sioux Falls last year that came into our office. I want to talk just a few minutes about listening and support calls because we don't often talk about those. 8.3% of the calls that came to us last year were listening and support calls. You know, those particular calls are often calls that there may be a crisis emerging, there may be a situation emerging that may be related to a mental health situation. There's difficulty that's coming along. If we can spend 10, 15, 20 minutes on the phone with that caller and we can de-escalate, we can bring the situation down to a manageable level, that means that there does not have to be a disruption with landlords. Emergency services don't need to be called in, and many times there may not have to be a hospitalization or perhaps the police involved in the situation. So we don't often talk about those listening and support calls, but they're an important part of what we do. 15 minutes with our staff is much cheaper than all those other things that we talked about happening out there. When we also talk about on page 3 the 10 top services that are requested by callers, you will note that the types of calls that we get over the years really hasn't changed a whole lot. The majority of our calls that we're still getting are still related to financial assistance and support. As a matter of fact, we were up 16% in the financial assistance and support from 2005 to 2007. But we are up in basic immediate needs, I believe, by about 36%. So you'll notice there's been a huge growth area in those particular calls. But the same type of calls we're getting, interestingly enough, have stayed the same. One of the things that we have noted on page 4 is when you talk about unmet needs. By the way, an unmet need means that when somebody calls us up, that type of resource they're looking for doesn't exist in our area, or perhaps they've already exhausted all the resources that we know about. So that's what an unmet need is. You'll note on page 4 that our unmet needs have really dropped the last few years. And we've made note of that. We thought that was kind of interesting that was out there. We've also seen some programs that have started because they recognize those are unmet needs. I use the Moving Assistance Program as an example that just started a few weeks ago in our Sioux Falls area. Because the Moving Assistance Program was an outgrowth of this where we've said, you know what, people, when they need to move out of an apartment on very short notice and don't have any financial resources or friends with pickups that they can call, they leave their furniture there. And then it's up for landlords to deal with, and it's up for other programs to help them find beds for babies and all those type of things. Volunteers have come together to start that program. Excellent example of how they've heard about the issue and heard about the challenges that are out there. I do want to point out the follow-up evaluations because we call about 7.5% of our information and referral callers. We call them within 3 days, and we ask them some very basic questions. And one of the things we're wanting to know is, have you had a chance, have you followed up on that referral we gave you, and what's been the result? 60% of the people have said yes, and we've got it taken care of and resolved. I think that's an excellent number. On top of that, there's 20% of the population who says, I'm waiting for a callback or I've got an appointment scheduled. So there's the potential for 80% of the people receiving the services that they're looking for. We feel very good about that particular number. A couple of things that I just want to point out through the rest of the programs that we do, because I know I don't want to take all your time. I could talk for another hour about community trends, and I'm not going to take that much time. But one of the things that I think is very interesting is on page 5 when we talk about individuals seeking group volunteer opportunities. We often think about volunteers as being that nice person who comes every Thursday at 2 o'clock to that agency and volunteers for an hour every week, whether or not it's snowing outside. Well, you know what's changed? And we're following the national trend, is that individual volunteers aren't coming through as much as groups are. And you'll notice our support from 2004 to 2007 has grown tremendously. And that has challenged our agencies and our organizations to think a little bit differently, because instead of that volunteer coming every Thursday at 2 o'clock, they now have 30 people who want to come volunteer on a Saturday. And you have to think about your projects just a little bit differently. You have to think about how you're going to deliver those services and how you're going to train and supervise them out there. So the next few pages talking about a little bit about volunteerism. What we think is interesting, we noted, is that 33% of the people who registered, who came to our online website for volunteer opportunities, said they'd never volunteered before. Now, I think if I asked for probably a raise in hands here, I think most people have spent some time this past year volunteering, but 33% said they were brand new to volunteering. So we talk a lot about the ask being very important, that we need to go through and ask for people to volunteer. I will point out that Board Connections is something that we're now doing online, and we've been pleased to have several of the city board positions that you guys have on your committees that you have looking for that have been listed on those also. We talked a little bit about child care. It talks about the growth that we've had, 25%. By the way, I want to point out that at least 50% of the callers looking for child care referrals are low income, meaning that they fall under 80% of the median family income in the Sioux Falls area. The last part of the publication talks about a topic that's probably one of the most difficult any of us can ever deal with, and that's the issue of suicide. We are the only certified suicide hotline in the state of South Dakota. And if you dial 1-800-SUICIDE or 1-800-273-TALK, which is the national talk line that is promoted, we take those calls. All the 605 area code calls are routed to us. And last year we took 732 calls related to suicide. 732 calls that came in. When you look at the bottom of page 12, on there you will see the types of calls that came in. A large number of them are level 1, meaning suicide is being threatened. It comes up in the conversation, there's a consideration of it. Level 2 mean that there is a specific suicidal plan, and level 3 that means that it's being carried out. Level 2s sometimes, and level 3s almost always, may require us to take some type of intervention if we feel that the person's in danger. And have a great relationship working with Metro and the Sioux Falls Police Department for making sure that people are safe out there. When you look at page 13 and 14, it does talk about Minnehaha County and the specific statistics. And I'm flipping over to page 14 when you look at the suicide rates, because that is per capita. When you look at the national level, it's about 10 to 10.5, maybe 11 deaths per 100,000 is how many suicides you will see nationally. The state of South Dakota is that reddish line, and you will notice that it is above the national line. We do have a suicide rate in the South Dakota that has grown in the past few years, and the green line is just Minnehaha County. And with the exception of, I believe it is just 2006, you will notice that we are ahead of the national curve and typically ahead of the state of South Dakota. That's a number that's very difficult for us to understand and sometimes even recognize that is happening here. But we are pleased that we can answer that phone number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We take calls from people who are having thoughts of suicide, from people who are trying to help and reach out to somebody who is having thoughts of suicide, and also to family members and friends after a completed suicide. Questions that I can answer?
Any questions for Ms. Muller today? I would just like to say, Carol, that we really appreciate the update, and you have such an enthusiastic presentation style that's always fun to hear from you, and we appreciate all the other work you do in our community also. I've been following fairly closely the efforts in Pierre on their community efforts on trying to minimize or totally eliminate the suicides in that area. And anyway, I hope that they have considered consulting with you guys, because you are really so knowledgeable about this area, and I'm wishing Pierre and its extended community or area the best as it tries harder to get a hold on this tragic situation.
We actually are working with 25 communities right now underneath a grant that is coming through SAMHSA, the state of South Dakota, on doing outreach to that. So another example of private-public partnerships, such as the City of Sioux Falls, that exist that make programs possible.
Would anyone have any other questions or comments?
Just thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. At this point, we will have a presentation of our 2007 annual audit report by Gene Rowenhorst, and Director of Finance, and also Ty Inglis from the Eide Bailey accounting firm here in our city. And welcome, both of you.
Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance. Unfortunately, David Steen was not able to be with us today. The weather got to him, otherwise we would have had him here today. He will be down here at some date in the future, something that's mutually convenient. We will try and reschedule him to do that, at least meet with you. We have the 2007 CAFR, as it's called, completed. You should have seen it. It should have been in your mailboxes Thursday afternoon. There's more information probably than you ever wanted to know about the City of Sioux Falls, but it is a very comprehensive and complete report. And I guess we're very proud of the fact that this report is done and being delivered to you on March 31st. That is highly unusual in the realm of government reporting, to have that kind of information 90 days after the year end. And it's information that is useful to you now going forward into 08 and then we do the 09 budget. Ty will go through the business management advisory letter that they send us. He'll go over that, a few things in that with you, and take you through a little bit in the CAFR. And then if you'll have any questions at this point, we'll be happy to try and answer your questions. Ty?
Thank you, Gene. And welcome, Ty.
Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. And as Gene mentioned, my partner Dave Steen, who kind of heads up our governmental practice, intended to be here today, but our fine spring weather prevented that, so we'll get through this. Ty Inglis, I'm a partner here in the Sioux Falls office. Dave comes from Minneapolis. And it was interesting. I was visiting with Councilor Jameson a little bit. He's been on the council now. He's in commission 17 years. And I think as Gene indicated, really, that when we talk about the progress that has been made in the finance department and the audit process has really been remarkable and significant, because to have these numbers audited and to have our opinion included and to have the CAFR is really unusual for an organization, particularly a municipality of this size. It used to be 20-some years ago, we were just starting the audit in April, and the process would continue on into July and wrap up into August. So I think that really speaks very highly of the job at the finance department, Gene and Tom and Dwayne and the team that you have. Speaks well of their abilities to get through that. And I'm pleased also to report that the opinion on the financial statements that you find in the comprehensive annual financial report is an unqualified opinion. There are no exceptions to that report. And in addition, there were no adjustments that were made as a result of the audit. So I think that speaks very well that the information that you're receiving throughout the year in the various interim reports that you receive and then the final numbers is accurate. So again, it's a privilege for us to be the independent auditors for the City of Sioux Falls, and we report to you and to the audit committee, and this is an important communication, and would be happy to respond to any comments or questions that you have. So we'll just talk a bit about the process. We'll introduce you to the CAFR, and be happy to respond to any questions that you have. So we are done. We have issued our opinion. Our responsibility, you hire us to give you an opinion on the financial statements. And in our opinion, we're giving you reasonable assurance that what's contained in this document that you have is not materially misstated. And that assurance is really meant to be at a very high level. Now, obviously, in a city of this complexity and this size, we don't look at all the transactions, but we really try to find where we believe the most risk in the financial statements is, where there could be material misstatements either due to fraudulent financial reporting, misappropriation of assets, and then target our audit procedures to bring that down to a relatively low level. And again, as I indicated, none of our audit procedures resulted in any adjustments to the financial statements. So our audit went according to our scope and our timing. 2007 was a relatively quiet year as far as accounting principles. There were no significant changes in the way we accounted for transactions this last year. One of the areas we do look at and focus on during the course of our audit is estimates. There are some relatively significant estimates that are involved in the financial statements, and that's really an area where bias or errors in judgment can occur. And so we take a look at those. Significantly, depreciation as it relates to how we recover the cost of assets over the depreciable lives. Insurance claims, you have self-insured positions for various insurance claims, workers' comp claims, and so any claims that are incurred but not reported, we have to estimate those, so that's one area we take a close look at. Capitalization of infrastructure, that was a significant change a few years back with the implementation of Standard Number 34, how we capitalize those and depreciate those infrastructure costs. And then the landfill closure and post-closure costs, we're required to put an estimate of what it will cost to close those landfills, and we take a look at those estimates also. And then also your pension. The liability that you have for future pension benefits, you engage an actuarial firm to assist you with those, and we look at the underlying assumptions that are made in reporting the actuarial liabilities for your defined benefit pension plans. We didn't have any difficulties. We were able to execute our audit plan in accordance with the plan when we met with the audit committee earlier before we began our field work. And really the way things are structured to kind of meet the timing of issuing this thing in March is we'll do our audit planning generally in September and October. We'll do what we call pre-audit in generally November and December. So we're actually out doing audit procedures prior to the year end. And then our actual audit procedures, our field work occurs in late January, early February. And then Tom and his team draft this comprehensive annual financial report during that February time period, January time period, and then we'll review that. This also goes to the State of South Dakota Department of Legislative Audit. They're required to review it prior to issuance, and we work with them to answer and respond to any comments and questions that they have during the course of the audit. We didn't have any disagreements. We've obtained all the necessary management representations. Another significant piece to the audit is just not the audit of the financial statements, but the city receives federal funding from various programs. That's in the back part of the comprehensive annual financial report. And if you receive over $500,000 worth of federal financial assistance, you are required to have an audit of that federal program. So we've got about $7.8 million in federal financial assistance in 2007. And we're required to assess which of those are major programs. And typically those are programs in excess of $300,000. And we audited 4 major programs this last year. And each of those programs has what the federal government calls compliance requirements. And so during the course of our audit, what we'll do is obtain those compliance and test that indeed the city did comply with all the requirements that were necessary for those federal awards. And I'm pleased to report also in those there are no findings, there are no questioned costs. And then we're also required to look at the internal controls, the policies and procedures that you have in place to safeguard the dollars, that they're spent in accordance with the terms and conditions of those grants. And so we study and evaluate the internal control, and we're required to report if there are any deficiencies in internal controls. First, whether there are any significant deficiencies, which is a relatively low level of weakness in your internal control. That's something that's more than inconsequential could occur and not be detected by your internal control system. And again, I'm pleased to report we don't have any significant deficiencies, and therefore we don't have any what would be more severe material weaknesses in internal controls. So we've completed our audit. As a process, something that's, I think, added some value for us and for the city and taxpayers is certainly working with the internal audit function. I think that has really helped to supplement the audit process. We're really able to get much more coverage, working together with Rich and his group to get into the various departments on a rotating basis more frequently so that, indeed, there's audit procedures being employed in all the various major city departments on a regular and ongoing basis. So, really, as you go through this comprehensive annual financial report, you'll see there's a letter of transmittal in the beginning, prepared by the Finance Department. Our opinion on the financial statements is on page 13 of that document. Again, it says, based on the work that we did, we believe that what's contained in that document is a fair representation of the financial condition of the City of Sioux Falls and the changes in net assets of the city for 2007. And then there is the management's discussion and analysis. This is a required supplementary information that begins on page 16 of the document, where your management discusses and explains in clear language what some of the changes and highlights of the financial condition of the city are for this last year. And then the basic statements begin on page 24. There are a series of basic financial statements that are required to be presented, and then there are a series of notes to the financial statements that provide some very detailed and required disclosures to help, again, readers fully understand or attempt to understand what some of the more summarized numbers are in the report itself. And then towards the back is this what we call the single audit, that work that we do on the federal awards. So I think one of the other changes that has occurred over the last 20 years or so, this document now is prepared by your staff. I think when we first looked at this some time ago, it was actually the audit firm that completed this document and then also issued the opinion on it. And so that really is a testament to the process, how it works, the systems that are in place for getting this to you so that it really can be used as a tool throughout 2008. So that maybe very quickly, or perhaps not quickly enough, is our presentation. I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments that you might have as a council.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, sir.
Yes. I mean, what a process to go through auditing the City of Sioux Falls. How many people from your staff or your company is involved in doing this audit of the city?
That's a good question. One of the things we did this year is we had a new audit manager on the job. We'd had some turnover. So Melissa White, who heads up and works in our government practice, came in and ran the job, along with probably 3 other staff people, and then Dave Steen, who does the detailed review, and then I help coordinate some of the local stuff that goes on. So it's probably 6 people.
Okay.
Over a period. We're in and out of here probably parts of 4 different weeks.
Also, another question I have is in regard to South Dakota state law. How extensive do you audit our compliance with state law?
The Department of Legislative Audit has a checklist of statutory controls that is required for the audit firm to complete. And so it's at a relatively high level of hitting some of the major compliance attributes, but that's done every year also.
And then lastly, you talked about estimating the cost for the closure landfills and things like that. I guess I'm kind of surprised that you get involved in that, because doesn't it take a lot of specialized expertise? I mean, maybe you have that, but can you say something about that? I mean,
Your management teams does engage the specialists of people that help come up with those estimates. And so really what we're doing is evaluating the qualifications of those specialists.
Okay.
And we do deal with this in other cities. And so you look at the assumptions, the major ones that are involved in putting something like that together. So it's really evaluating the qualifications of the people doing it, looking at the estimates, looking at how they've compared to prior years to see if there is any change or any bias, or if, based on our experience with other governmental entities, those are reasonable.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Would there be any other comments or questions for Mr. Inglis today? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being
We
with us
appreciate,
this afternoon.
Appreciate the
And
opportunity.
at this point, we will move to our next item on the agenda, and I will call back our Director of Finance, Jean Rowenhorst, for a monthly update. And we would like to thank you and your staff for your conscientious work. Always.
Thank you very much. I've most of my career, or somewhere way back when, I learned that if you collect good people around you, you're going to be successful, and if they're successful, I'm successful, and my job is to make them successful, or give them the resources so they can be successful. And clearly, they've done an outstanding job, as demonstrated by the clean opinion that you get on the financial statements, and the timeliness that you're getting the information, and the detail in the information. You should take note that the city is in good financial condition. We are in compliance with all of the standards that are set by the AICPA and by GFOA. We do not have any issues with unfunded liabilities that a lot of other municipalities have, dealing with things like medical care and retirement and things of that nature. We comply with the OPEB rules now, and we're right on schedule as far as getting that particular piece of the financial statement up and current, but we're within the standards. The time that has been allowed for that to work into its full capacity. In fact, we'd probably almost be in a situation where if we wanted to, we probably could figure out a way to actually fund it all today, but if we don't have to, we're not going to. And we did get a management letter. It had some suggestions in it. We will develop an action plan to deal with each one of the points that were brought up in the management letter that may or may not need attention. And finally, the one thing to keep in mind is our financial statement is good, the city is strong, but our growth will continue to stress us. It's going to keep getting more and more interesting to allocate our resources over an almost unlimited amount of wants and needs. But it's a nice problem to have. Sure, a lot better than the alternative. So we're not complaining about it, but it is a challenge. And finally, should be about now, about 20 minutes, the CAFR will be coming up on the internet on the city's website, so it'll be available to everyone. One of the other things you should keep in mind, this particular document is the one that groups like Moody's and people that buy our bonds relies on. And we've clearly gotten good reviews there, and with a AA3 rating, we're clearly in the top percentiles as far as financial strength and capability and in our reporting. Now to go on to this month's review, actually what we'd like to do is not report right now. We've scheduled a meeting with the fiscal committee. We have made some significant changes to the monthly report. We think they are good changes that will simplify things for the council. We've got a scheduled meeting with the fiscal committee on Monday next week, a week from today, to go over the changes. And if you want a draft, you're welcome to it. but we just as soon not comment on it, or not talk about it today, and wait and let the fiscal committee review it with us, and then we'll go over it. We think we've got a really very much improved report now that's considerably easier to understand, and we've gotten rid of a lot of schedules that I don't think got a lot of attention anyhow, and we'll see what the fiscal committee says about it. One of the things we have got, though, is we're going to start putting a lot more attention on this CIP program, and we're going to try and, some of the things we've tried to do is figure out a way to draw to your attention where projects are actually at. And that means from this nothing being done to being in design to bids being let, bids being awarded, under construction, completed. So what we want to try and make some progress on this year is reduce the amount of money that seems to end up at the end of the year that's not getting used, that could have been used if we had either known what was going on with the project or be able to take it in, move something up then and just slide one back and move things around a little bit. So if it's all right with the council, we'll do it that way.
Does that work fine for all of you? Okay, and thank you very much, Jean. We'll look forward to hearing more from you in the near future on the new process after you visit with the Finance Committee, Fiscal Committee, I mean. Okay, let's see, I'm going to, I think at this point, adjourn our meeting unless you have something else today that I have forgotten. Councilor Brown?
Just a clarification to back up to our talk about abandoned or condemned houses. I was checking my email because I thought I had something on that on those properties on Spring. And under the property maintenance code, Bob, it takes up to 2 years before a house can be demolished, 2 years of nothing happening, according to staff and an email I got. So, for example, one house there will not be demolished until August of this year. The other one should be done sometime before summer.
Councilor Brown, thank you very much for that timely update. I do wish those processes worked faster also. Would there be anything else by any of you today before I adjourn our meeting for this week, our informational meeting? We do have an executive session planned, and I need a motion to go into executive session, please.
So moved, Litz.
Councilor Litz, a second, please.
Second.
A second, Councilor Jameson. So we will just take a 5-minute break, and we will be in executive session.
For information.
For litigation reasons, excuse me, I'm supposed to always say the purpose, thank you. For litigation reasons, excuse me for my error or omission. And thank you all for being with us today. We'll start again in just a few minutes.